गुड इवनिंग और गना शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। वेलकम टू गना शॉट। सत श्री अकाल एंड वणक्कम। आज हम बात करने वाले हैं चाइना फूड इनसिक्योरिटी और सिक्योरिटी। वी कीप टॉकिंग ऑफ चाइना, how insecure it is from the food point of view and how vulnerable it is. Today we'll go into details. And to go into details on this subject, I have with me Balasubramaniam. Mr. Balasubramaniam is basically a senior research officer. He's been with the Chennai Center of China Studies now for over 3 years since I've known him. He's actually the pillar of the Chennai Center of China Studies, and he virtually, does a lot of programs, a lot of international programs, everything. He's also pursuing his PhD, and he has a lot of knowledge about China, and he's done a lot of research on China, right? And for me, while हम सब बहुत सीनियर लोगों को लेके आते हैं गना शॉट के ऊपर, मैंने आप लोगों को ये भी बताया था कि मैं उन विशेषज्ञों को लेके आऊंगा जो एक सब्जेक्ट के बारे में जानते हैं और वो एक्सपर्ट हैं। और इसीलिए जब मैंने ये पूछा था इनसे कि भाई आप क्या करोगे गना शॉट के लिए, गना शॉट में उन्होंने बोला कि मैं फूड सिक्योरिटी के ऊपर बात करूंगा। और मैंने बोला हाँ, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है फूड सिक्योरिटी के बारे में बात करने के लिए। सो आई सेड फाइन। सो गुड इवनिंग बाला, वेलकम टू गना शॉट।
Uh, Good evening, sir. First of all, thanks for the invitation. It's a privilege to be here, and it's an honor to virtually share the stage with you, sir. And sir, first, most strength and power to you, for starting this initiative of Peek into Everyday China. And congratulations, sir. Today it has grown into Ganashot, as well as your program on the Peek into Everyday China has grown to a stage where it's literally a one-stop shop where anything and everything in China.
Yeah,
So
thank
most
you.
thanks to you, sir, and please do continue doing more programs on China, sir. In fact, I myself, have referred to many of your talks. You know better because
Yeah,
our association starts since C3S days.
long back.
And yes, so thank
Right.
you very much, sir.
या मैं बताना चाहता हूं सबको कि बाला, यू नो, कैन यू मैनेज हिंदी और ओनली इंग्लिश? You
I can comfortably
only
manage
English.
only in English, sir. Yeah.
ओके, ठीक है। आज ऐसे करेंगे हम कि क्योंकि बाला डजंट नो हिंदी टू वेल, so Bala will go through his presentation in English. Or what I'd request you is, after every slide which you show, just pause a minute. I will give a summary of that in Hindi, because a lot of people who see the show who understand only Hindi, and we're catering for both Hindi and English, right? So with that, can we start? Over to you, and the floor is all yours. Should I put on the first slide?
Please, sir. Look forward. Please, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
कीजिए।
Today, thank you, sir. And today, the topic I'll be discussing today will be China's food security or insecurity and issues and implications for the entire globe, as well as specifically for India. Because whether today you like it or not, one action that China initiates, it has got its repercussions which are felt across the world. So with this, I would like to move on to the first slide. Next slide, please, sir. So this will be the broad canvas on what all I'll be discussing today. First, we'll introduce a topic for the audience, and then we'll little bit touch upon the geography, speaking about the agricultural geography. And we'll look at the trend starting from 1990, including an interesting book titled Who Will Feed China. Then we get into the current trends, and we'll also be, because today a lot is said about the One Belt and One Road. So in that specifically with regard to food security, we'll be speaking about the food Silk Road and what are all the strategies that China has adopted, including the global governance part, because today all the initiatives that has been initiated by China has been titled like, say, for example, Global Security Initiative, Global Development Initiative, including the recent, the Triad of Global Civilization Initiative. So The word global has been, China has been very fond of the word global. So we'll touch upon what has been the strategies adopted by China in terms of global food governance. And we'll discuss about, since the topic is also insecurity of China, we'll touch upon the vulnerabilities that China faces in the food sector, especially the agriculture sector, and what steps China has taken to avert and come out of such vulnerabilities. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
And let me start with an idiom because Chinese have always been very fond of idioms. Even if you look at the statements from many leaders, including Xi Jinping, you see a lot of idioms and phrases come in between their talks. This is to give them an understanding. So today I would like to start with the statement "Min Ishi Vaidyan." To translate it into English, it means to the people the food is heaven. For the population, food comes the first priority. It is like God. All the ethical niceties and others always come second. There also goes a very famous Chinese idiom: a guest who comes home, we always welcome them with fine wine. This is again, the wine is associated with food. So Chinese always attach greater importance to food. It is also because if you look at throughout the course of Chinese history, they have constantly gone through historical memories of starvation. One very at least in the recent past, last 60 or 70 years, which can be the Great Famine, which happened between 1959 to 61. Another cultural factor that Chinese plays a very high amount of attachment towards food is also a symbol of regional pride as well as a distinction. So it is a reflection of the respect to guests. The more quality and the more varieties of food that you're able to treat your guests with, that is how you place yourself higher, in the eyes of your guests. So primarily, what I try to derive here, my argument is, ensuring food self-sufficiency in three factors. One is availability of food, as well as accessibility of food, as well as affordability. All the three components has always been into the Chinese psyche, including the Chinese leaders.
तो
Next
आप
slide,
जो
please.
बता रहे हैं कि वो ये है कि खाना जो है चाइना के लोगों के लिए स्वर्ग है और वो इसीलिए स्वर्ग मानते हैं क्योंकि चाइना में बहुत दिनों में बहुत साल से अकाल पड़ते हैं और जहां वो भूखमरी से जूझते हैं और ये भी देखा गया है कि चाइना में जो राज्य हैं उनके किंगडम्स जो हैं वो बदली होते रहते हैं जब भी अकाल होता है, राइट? और वो खाने के ऊपर बड़ा जोर देते हैं, राइट? और ये देखा गया है कि वो हर क्षेत्र वो अपना खाने के ऊपर जो ना वो लॉट ऑफ प्राइड इन व्हाट दे ईट एंड और दूसरों को देने में भी उनको काफी स्वाभिमान होता है कि हम अच्छा खाना दे सकते हैं बाकियों को वगैरह वगैरह वगैरह, राइट? जो खाना और फूड बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है एक चाइना के आदमी के लिए, राइट? यही इसीलिए ये फूड सिक्योरिटी और इनसिक्योरिटी भी एक बहुत अहम चीज है जिसके बारे में जी जिनपिंग खुद बोलते रहते हैं. या प्लीज
Next we
कैरी
will
ऑन.
try to touch. Thank you, sir. Next we'll try to touch upon the nomenclature. Since we are conversing in English, we tend to give the abbreviation.
Yeah, बोल.
Am I audible, sir? Am I audible, sir?
You have bandwidth issues, Bala.
Okay. Now is it okay, sir? Am I audible, sir? So now little bit we will touch about the nomenclature part.
Oh, Bala is having bandwidth issues. I'll just remove him for 1 minute and I'll get him back. Yeah. Yeah,
I'm able to
you're
hear
okay
you,
now?
sir. Yeah, I'm able to hear you,
You're
sir.
good. Yeah, okay. We'll get back to the slide. Yeah, go ahead. Start with the whole thing.
Yes, sir. Now we'll speak about the nomenclature part because in English, to define, we call it as food security. But let us now try to compare that what the Chinese has to say, looking at from the Chinese perspective. So to look at it, the English term we generally call it as food security. So to literally to translate it into Chinese Mandarin, it would be Xiu and Xian. But if you look at all the text of the Chinese document and the white papers which has been released, this term of food security, which means Xiu and Shen, has been very, very rarely used by leaders, officials, as well as scholars. In fact, I would say they generally avoid using it. But in contrast, if you read the white papers, the actual term which can be closely equated to food security in Chinese is called Liangxi and Xian. It means grain security. So what they mean by grain is they include all cereals and all the non-cereals food piles also included. So it includes rice, it includes wheat, it includes soybeans, and everything. So if you look at it very carefully, it's an all-encompassing term. So this is how the Chinese see it.
तो आप जो बोल रहे हो इसका मतलब ये है कि फूड सिक्योरिटी यानी कि खाने का सुरक्षा, वो ऐसे खाने का सुरक्षा के बारे में चाइना वाले नहीं बोलते हैं, पर वो बोलते हैं अनाज का सुरक्षा। और ये अनाज में हो सकता है वो गेहूं हो, बाजरा क्यों ना हो, या कॉर्न क्यों ना हो, मक्का, या चावल क्यों ना हो, राइट? तो ये हमें समझना चाहिए जब चाइना वाले बोलते हैं, जब हम सोचते हैं फूड सिक्योरिटी, वो बोल रहे हैं अनाज का सिक्योरिटी के बदले अनाज का सुरक्षा के बारे में। तो या प्लीज कैरी ऑन विद एग्रीकल्चरल ज्योग्राफी।
Now I would little bit touch upon, I would like to speak in terms of statistics. So to look at statistics, China today feeds close to 22% of the world's population, but it does this only with a mere 7% of arable land that it possesses, through which it is able to do its agriculture. So speaking of this, today China has been the largest producer of many crops, including they have attained self-sufficiency in terms of cotton. They have attained self-sufficiency in rice, potatoes, including other vegetables. What is also very notable is, unlike other underdeveloped and developing countries, today China, for its population, is able to solve its subsistence problem. So it is able to not only provide food to its population, but also as China progresses economically, what you get to see is rising amount of income, disposable income within the hands of the consumer. So naturally, when you have higher income, you naturally tend to go for higher order foods. So there's a distinct change in the dietary structure, dietary pattern of its population. So more money into the hands of people, more nutritious, rich food like meat, eggs, and other products they tend to consume. So China was able to even provide for that. So as a consequence, what you see is today higher consumption of animal protein like meat and other products which the Chinese population consume. So this has caused adding another layer of stress to the China's agriculture sector, because people are now consuming more animal protein. This means you have to constantly keep improving and add value to the food chain. So this creates greater pressure in planting as well as animal feed, because if you look at it, that the input for animal feed, it actually comes from agriculture. I'll give you one example. Say for example, soybeans. The primary soybeans, you get it from agriculture, but that is also used as a feed for animals like pigs. So this is also all created a surge in agriculture.
Yeah, so what you are saying is that आप जो बोल रहे हो वो ये है कि इनका जो एग्रीकल्चरल जो ज्योग्राफी में, कि चाइना के पास जमीन कम है और आबादी ज्यादा है, पर इसके बावजूद वो अपना सबसिस्टेंस यानी कि रोज के खाने का वो अपना गेहूं, चावल वगैरह काफी उगाते हैं। पर जैसे जैसे चाइना अमीर होता गया है, राइट, वो उनका रिक्वायरमेंट ऑफ फूड बदलता गया है। अभी वो मांस चाहते हैं, मच्छी चाहते हैं, हायर ऑर्डर फूड चाहते हैं, अच्छे अच्छे खाना चाहते हैं, और उनके यानी कि उनको पालने के लिए, पोसने के लिए और उसको टेबल के ऊपर रखने के लिए उनको और गेहूं वगैरह पैदा करना पड़ता है, राइट। तो एक इनका जो प्रॉब्लम एक्चुअल सबसिस्टेंस नहीं है, ये कोई क्योंकि भूखमर्रा से कोई नहीं कष्ट होगा चाइना के अंदर, but they want better kind of food, right? So what you have said. So we'll look at the other aspects of agricultural geography.
Now I would, you must be seeing a map there. So if you primarily if you divide China into two parts, agriculturally speaking, in the north of China you will find a lot of grains and millet-eating population, whereas in the south of China you will see a lot of cultivation of rice and rice-eating population. To give you a backdrop, prior to industrialization, the kind of China what you see now, just prior to that, China was primarily an agricultural society where majority, close to 90
Put the net
percentage
off.
of its population was
Put your net off.
close to. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you're audible.
Primarily, China was historically after 1914, China was primarily an agricultural society where 90 percentage of its population was involved in agriculture and farming. And also in that time, you had a lot of influence of Confucianism. According to the tenets of Confucianism, farmers were very highly, regarded in the society. They were considered to be the very honest members of society, so which also made naturally farming a very prestigious and lucrative occupation. And then, with the birth of Communist China in 1949, what happened was there was a shift in the power dynamic because Mao came in. It became a communist country, and what happened was after Mao taking over China, once it became a communist country, this farmland was, redistributed from the landlords to the peasants, which totally resulted in the shift in the power dynamic.
Yeah, तो कहने का मतलब ये है कि चाइना के अंदर जो लैंडलॉर्ड्स थे वो माओ आने के बाद खत्म हो गए, और उसके बाद क्या है कि पावर डायनामिक्स जो कल्चरल रेवोल्यूशन और ग्रेट लीप फॉरवर्ड के बाद फ्रॉम द एग्रीकल्चरल सेक्टर द होल पावर मूव टू द अर्बन सेक्टर बेसिकली, राइट? या प्लीज कैरी ऑन.
Next slide, please, sir.
Yeah, sorry.
And now we will look at a very interesting book. What happened was in 1996, Lester R. Brown. It was initially an article titled "Who Will Feed China? A Wake-up Call for a Small Planet." This was initially it was an article which was written by Lester Brown, which later was converted into a book and which was published. It highlighted the stark realities that China was facing in those times in the 1990s. Because what the author highlighted, Lester Brown highlighted, was China is going to face significant amount of pressure going forward because it has to feed nearly 20% of its world's population with only 7% of the land. Because that was also the time where the population was rapidly increasing in China. And because since 1980s, as the population was growing, the food consumption was also tremendously increased. And then immediately when the Lester's Brown book came, what we saw, the immediate reaction was in 1996, China also came out with its first white paper on the food security. Which highlighted the importance of sufficiently allocating food for itself so that it is able to, feed. So for the first time, it came out with targets where it said 95% of self-sufficiency for grains and 100% for cereals. I can also add a point here because that was the time China also came out with something called a red line policy. So what we mean by a red line policy is that China decided that we will have at least 120 million acres of land which will be devoted only for agriculture, and that land will not be used for any other purposes like industrialization or any other purpose except only dedicated to China. In fact, if you look at the period of 1990s, from 1980 to 1990s, in the slide there, you could see in the red color background, you can see an iron bowl. So it was in those times, it was very popularly called the iron bowl syndrome. What do you mean by iron bowl syndrome is that people always found government jobs to be very lucrative in China, because once you have a government job, you have an assured source of income. Through an assured source of income, you'll be able to
Media
assure, guarantee food for not only you but as well as for your family. So that was the scenario.
या तो जो आप बोल रहे हो ये है कि ये किताब जो लिखा गया था लेस्टर ब्राउन के जरिए कि कौन चाइना को खिलाएगा, राइट? इन्होंने बहुत दे केम आउट विद लॉट ऑफ प्लान्स और उन्होंने ये नियुक्त कर दिया कि इतना जमीन होगा जो हर वक्त एग्रीकल्चरल के लिए इस्तेमाल किया जाएगा ताकि उनको कभी अनाज का कमी ना हो, राइट? और उसके लिए इन्होंने व्हाइट पेपर वगैरह लेके आए और मेरे ख्याल में ये सब होने के बावजूद कुछ ये इसमें इनका अस्थिरता आया है जब इनका आमदनी बढ़ना शुरू हुआ है। उसके बारे में आगे हम बात करेंगे। तो लेट्स गेट टू द नेक्स्ट स्लाइड।
So now, little bit we will look at current trends. Quickly coming to the current trends, what China has been doing. So as I mentioned earlier today, to a considerable extent, China has attained self-sufficiency in terms of wheat, rice, and corn. But however, as I mentioned, with the rising income, the dietary patterns have also changed, which has caused a stress and more demand for meat consumption and soybeans. So I would just like to give you one statistics regarding the meat consumption. Today, the production of meat has increased by a factor of 10, which has also created a challenge. How will China will be able to feed its 1.4 billion population? Because you have a limited arable land, while also you have to accommodate a rising number of cows and pigs, which is a delicacy
Yeah.
in China. And this also now today exposes China's vulnerability towards its global market. It all started with the assertiveness of Xi Jinping. Then the previous U.S. administration, it started with President Donald Trump. What it started as a trade war where China was forced to commit an amount of money to buy soybeans from U.S. So all these exposed China's vulnerability to the global market. And to supplant this, China did a lot of global investments. They acquired land in Australia, South America, Africa, and Ukraine. So if you put all the amount of investments in terms of area, you will find that the area is equivalent to the size of Belgium. So this is to give you a proportionate idea how much China has invested in other countries, for food production. Also, another trend what you'll be able to see is China has pushed a lot of its domestic business leaders to invest in this food sector. So you will find Alibaba, Pinduoduo, Dingdong, and Nike and JD.com, pumping in a lot of money in terms of technology, in terms of warehousing capacity, in terms of adding value and creating more value chains in terms of food sector. So just to give you one simple stats, today the total online retail in China accounts for 23%, out of which 7% happens in the agri sector.
Okay. राइट। तो इसका मतलब आप जो आपने संक्षिप्त में बताना है तो चाइना जो है गेहूं, चावल और मक्का के लिए सेल्फ सफिशिएंट है, पर क्योंकि आजकल उनका खाने का स्टाइल बदली हो गया, ज्यादा मांस खाते हैं और खास करके इनको बीफ और सुअर यानी पोर्क ज्यादा चाहिए, ठीक? उनको खाना खिलाना पड़ता है और उस खाने के लिए इनके पास उतना जगह नहीं है, राइट? और अगर उनको खाना खिलाना है तो फिर ये बाहर ग्लोबल मार्केट में जाके सामान लेना पड़ेगा और इसके लिए इन्होंने क्या किया कि बाहर जाके इन्होंने इन्वेस्टमेंट करना शुरू किया फूड सेक्टर के अंदर, चाहे वो ऑस्ट्रेलिया में क्यों ना हो, साउथ अमेरिका में, अफ्रीका में या यूक्रेन में और सब कुछ। और इनका जो जमीन, अगर पूरा जमीन जहां इन्होंने बाहर ले लिया किसी तरीके से, वो एक बेल्जियम जितना देश है उतना बड़ा जमीन इनके पास है जो इनका फूड सिक्योरिटी को एश्योर करता है। और उसके साथ साथ इनके जितने बड़े बड़े कारोबार हैं, अलीबाबा और पिंडुओ वगैरह, वो भी फूड में काफी इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं। तो ओवरऑल चाइना का प्रॉब्लम जहां तक हम समझते हैं वो फूड सेल्फ सफिशिएंसी नहीं है। बेसिक खाना अनाज वगैरह है इनके पास, इनको खतरा किससे है कि इनके पास पैसा है और उस पैसे के साथ अच्छा खाना खाना चाहते हैं जिस वो उसमें थोड़ा किल्लत आता है, राइट? या उसके लिए इनका उपाय है, ये बताएंगे अभी आगे।
So now we'll little bit talk about China's external engagement through through its mammoth scale of project, which is the One Belt and One Road, through which the argument is that China is now trying to create what we call, or it has rather already set into motion, creating what we call the Food Silk Road. So all the strategic components have been decoded, deciphered by a lot of experts, including in this prestigious forum of Ganesh itself. But my argument is that the most underappreciated, or rather the most understudied or underlooked aspect, would be looking at OBOR, which is a One Belt and One Road initiative through the prism of food security, which China has been trying to construct, as popularly called the Food Silk Road. So this happens through China tying up with several other countries through this project in terms of food and agricultural cooperation. Again, to highlight statistics, under OBOR, China has signed more than 100 agricultural cooperation agreements. So the just to give you in one word, the basic aim is to totally reconstruct the global food supply chain, and also ensuring that assuring the food security to China, so that China is able to feed its population, domestically. Because the moment there's a shortage of food, the CCP will feel that it's a threat to the CCP basically.
Yeah.
So the overall food security strategy is food import, as well as a part of international cooperation, it is to assure consistent food import. So for the
Yeah.
first time, what we also saw was China came out as a part of its policy strategy. It came out with a term in one of its papers and talk, which is called moderate imports. But we have to remember here is that it is not only through the One Belt and One Road that China has started its food and agricultural cooperation, because even previous to OBOR, there were a lot of different forums through which China was carrying out this food and agricultural cooperation. Say, for example, in 2000, they established something called China Africa Cooperative Forum. And then in 2003, they started the China Portuguese speaking countries Economic and Trade Cooperation Forum. And you had subsequently in 2004, they came out to China Arab Cooperation. So and the last one was China Pacific Island Cooperation. So all apart from that, China also has a lot of free trade agreements in with countries in India's neighborhood, like Pakistan, including in other continents like New Zealand, Peru, Costa Rica, Switzerland, South Korea, Australia. This is just to name a few. Of course, we are all aware of China's free trade agreement with countries in the ASEAN. So this is a disclaimer that I would like to put here. So it is not that only with the OBOR they started to cooperate in food. But the total outgoing strategy, visibly started after the 2007-8 global food crisis, where China came very explicit and open about it, what it colloquially called the going out strategy. So where Chinese wealthy business and companies started to make their presence felt overseas. So immediately after the 2013, once a BRI in his famed speech where Xi Jinping gave in Kazakhstan, where the OBOR was unveiled, in 2014, China set up what is something called the Interministerial Joint Conference on Agricultural Cooperation with several foreign countries. So this is a very significant point to note with. And also, they have thought about and utilized a forum, in establishing the South-South Cooperation Assistance Fund as a part of food and agricultural cooperation.
तो जो आप बोल रहे हो इसका मतलब ये है कि चाइना ने जो भी कदम उठाए टू बिकम सेल्फ सफिशिएंट बेसिक फूड के अंदर वीट, गेहूं और मक्का के, दे डिड, पर इसके साथ साथ उन्होंने बाहर जमीन कुछ खरीदा है और कुछ टेके पे भी दे दिया, खास करके आपने जैसे बताया ऑस्ट्रेलिया, अफ्रीका वगैरह वगैरह। पर जब ये बीआरए शुरू हुआ इनका, राइट, हम सोचते हैं कि बीआरए सिर्फ पोर्ट्स, रोड्स, रेलवेज वगैरह के बारे में और पावर सेक्टर के बारे में, ये साथ साथ धीरे धीरे इन्होंने ये एग्रीकल्चर भी इसके अंदर शामिल है। अगर आप सीपीईसी देखोगे, मैं आपको उदाहरण पे बात करूं जो आपने बात नहीं किया, सीपीईसी में भी एग्रीकल्चर का एक हिस्सा है। अगर आप अभी देखोगे कि हाल ही में पाकिस्तान आर्मी ने तकरीबन 45,000 एकर्स मांगा है लैंड, वो किसके लिए है? वो सीपीसी में जोड़ने के लिए है, राइट? तो चाइना हैज बीन गोइंग आउट, यानी कि ये सिर्फ अंदर ही नहीं, उनको पता है कि जैसे जैसे वो अमीर होता जाएगा उसको खाने का जरूरत और पड़ता जाएगा। अगर और चाइना के अंदर ये सब उगाने के लिए सीमित है, तो इसीलिए वो बाहर जाके इनका स्ट्रेटेजाइज करने शुरू किया, ताकि ये ग्लोबल फोरम्स में जाके स्ट्रेटेजाइज करना शुरू किया, जिससे वो उनका कभी भी फूड इनसिक्योरिटी महसूस ना करना पड़े। राइट, ये क्योंकि उनके दिमाग में है कि ये फूड सिक्योरिटी का प्रॉब्लम है। या कैरी ऑन।
Now we will little bit touch upon what are the issues that China faces with regard to rice, wheat, and corn. But before I just get into that, I would just like to give you one significant statistics, which is very important, I think. Today, China, as a part of its engagement with countries through BRI, these countries nearly produce, you have to remember, 40% of global cereals and oil crops. So this one statistics will highlight what has been the overall strategy of China and why these countries are going to be extremely significant for China in the coming years ahead. So now, three most important crops for China will be rice, wheat, and corn. Rice has always been accorded the highest policy priority for all leaders, including in all white papers with regard to food security. But however, the problem is it faces certain kind of structural imbalances, and the reasons of these structural imbalances are many. It is also because of climate change. It is also because of self-induced problems like land degradation and pollution. But just one thing would be, in 2014-15, they found close to 10% of rice that is produced in China faced from cadmium content, which is heavy metal pollution. That is because today China pumps in their priority is only to increase the output. So in return, what they sacrifice is the quality of soil that they sacrifice, because they pump in a lot of chemical fertilizers and pesticides into it, which is polluting the environment totally. And just to give you one statement which Xi Jinping used twice in his statements, he used the concept of rice bowl as a catchphrase. So this will illustrate just how important rice forms in its overall China's food security strategy. So speaking of rice in China particularly, there are two types of major varieties of rice that China produces. One is the Japonica rice, which is a little bit stout and short. And the next is the Indica varieties of rice, which is thin but tall. It's like you can say the Indian version of basmati rice. So what problem is, China faces oversupply of this Japonica rice, but whereas the local population in China, they prefer more of Indica rice. So the Indica rice is predominantly grown in countries like India, including Southeast Asia and South Asia. So again, this will tell you why China has been investing a lot in Pakistan. And when I mean Pakistan, I'm focusing only on the food security aspect. So this is about specific about the rice. And now let me just come to wheat. So as you all know, in the previous slide, we saw how agricultural China is divided into two parts, the north and the south. So south is predominantly rice, whereas the north is more of wheat. So next to rice, wheat is the second most important staple crop in China, because most in North China, they consume wheat. But what happening is, again, in terms of strictly speaking of wheat, due to rising income and shifting consumer food preference, there is a very, very acute shortage of high protein wheat. So again, this is why for China, as a part of OB-War, the Commonwealth of independent states, which includes the present-day Central Asian states, along with Azerbaijan and other countries, they are becoming very, very important for China for assuring the supply of wheat. So this is regarding wheat. And third, I would like to little bit touch upon corn. So more than rice and wheat, corn is an even more dearer state in China, because there are bigger concerns because of shortages, especially because of the Russia-Ukraine tensions. Corn was hugely hit. Even during the trade war, corn was also one of the components which was hit. So China faces greater concern with regard to corn. So as a part of diversification strategy, what China has did was, now they are concentrating a lot on Eastern Europe, including countries like Romania.
देखिए, ये अगर हम देखेंगे तो चावल, गेहूं और मक्का, राइट, इन्होंने काफी स्ट्रेटजीज अपनाया जिससे राइस और व्हीट इनको मिल जाए। मक्का में इनका प्रॉब्लम है, राइट? मक्का है ये खुद उगाते नहीं है। यूक्रेन युद्ध जब से शुरू हुआ है उनको वहां से काफी नहीं मिल रहा है। यूक्रेन से ये दो चीज लेते हैं, एक सनफ्लावर और एक मक्का, राइट? दोनों में इनको प्रॉब्लम हो गया है। और काफी मक्का ये यूएसए से लेते हैं। और ये मक्का कहाँ इस्तेमाल करते हैं? खास करके ये सूअरों को खाने के लिए, पोर्क पोर्क बनाने के लिए इनको मक्का चाहिए। और पोर्क क्योंकि ये काफी खाया जाता है चाइना के अंदर, मक्का इम्पोर्टेंट है। और अगर इन तीनों चीज यानी चावल, गेहूं और मक्का के बीच में अगर आप तुलना करोगे, इनको प्रॉब्लम एक्चुअली मक्का में है। और ये गए ईस्ट यूरोप वगैरह में, तो देखते हैं क्या होगा आगे कहानी। या कैरी ऑन बाला। या
Now we will, you must have heard a lot about this prestigious forum, must have repeated choke points, Malacca Straits, etc. But now there is something called a food choke point, which China has realized and China is trying to avoid it. And let us also now a little bit touch upon how China has been using food as a weapon and how it has been trying to weaponize food. So as a part of strategy of Food Silk Road, what China is trying to do is they are also trying to avoid, the food choke points. So as a part of OBOR, large infrastructures have been developed, which we all are aware of, including ports, railway lines, etc. So China is now trying to expand westward. The China-European rail link is one such instance, which gives China an alternate food supply route. So effectively what happens is China will be able to effectively avoid the Malacca dilemma, which is the Malacca Strait, as well as the Panama Canal, in case, rising tensions with the US and everything it happens. And today, if you look at it very carefully, China has used food as a weapon. They have a great influence on global food supply. Now, little bit I have to explain in detail how China is actually the modus operandi that China is using to weaponize food. See, today to feed its 1.4 billion population, China is a net importer of food. So it is always in the best interest of China. What China does is that the objective is to keep the global market always in a state of surplus, to ensure that the produce in the global market is always in a state of surplus through overseas agricultural investment, including technological transfer to boost global production. Because what happens is when it little bit, if you look at the laws of economics, when you always have a commodities in surplus, the prices will always remain low. But the problem is, it is always good for countries who are importing. It is always, but it will be bad for countries who are exporting. So this is how China, tries to maintain that balance in ensuring that food always remains in surplus. So when a push comes to shove in the event of a global food shortage, what happens is if China is able to suck up all the food through its increasing demand because of its appetite in feeding its population, China will aggravate. This action of China will aggravate problems in several other. It will have its repercussions across the globe, affecting specifically food importing countries. Also, just like what they did with Japan in terms of rare earth, China has the ability today to create an artificial demand, which will lead to artificially, rising of global, food prices. So this is the amount and leverage that China has today.
राइट, क्योंकि चाइना इसका मतलब यह है कि क्योंकि चाइना के पास पैसा है, दे हैव द हेफ्ट, वो जाके मार्केट्स में खरीद सकते हैं और ये खुद अपना खाना जो है बाहर देशों में बनाते हैं और उगाते हैं अनाज, राइट? ये ग्लोबल मार्केट को प्ले कर रहे हैं और ये ग्लोब में यानी कि दुनिया में या खाने का प्राइस को बढ़ा सकते हैं या घटा सकते हैं, राइट, डिपेंडिंग ऑन हाउ मच दे बाई, राइट? अगर वो किसी और देश को कष्ट में लाना चाहते हैं तो ज्यादा खरीद लेंगे, जिससे क्या है कि ग्लोबल फूड शॉर्टेज होगा तो फूड प्राइसेस बढ़ेंगे, फूड प्राइसेस बढ़ेंगे तो बाकी देशों को लिए दिक्कत होगा। और इनके पास ये वैसे भी हम सबको पता है, ये 2 साल का स्टॉक नॉर्मली रखते हैं चाइना, यही माना है 2-3 साल का स्टॉक है। यानी कि 2 वजह है इसके। एक तो वजह ये है कि इनके पास हर वक्त 2 साल का स्टॉक रहता है, और उसके अलावा अगर कल के दिन पनामा कनाल या मलाक्का स्ट्रेट में अगर किसी ने रोक लगा दिया तो खाने का किल्लत नहीं होगा है। तो ये क्या है कि चाइना इज वेपनाइजिंग फूड टू देयर एडवांटेज, राइट। और खास करके जैसे आप आगे बताएंगे, चाइना क्या है, ये लोग होल दुनिया के अंदर फूड गवर्नेंस के ऊपर भी हावी हो रहा है। या प्लीज कैरी ऑन बाला।
Thank you, sir. Just in supporting my previous argument, how China is weaponizing food, I would like to read one particular statement which Xi Jinping gave in 2013. I'll just say what he spoke. He
या
said,
read.
those who control grain supply control the trade and the pricing power. So this is what he exactly said. So the focus is now on pricing power. So now, little bit we will, sir, the slides are off. Yeah. So now we will little bit touch about China's global food governance. Chinese have been very open about it in their interest in demonstrating and growing interest in shaping the global food governance. And interestingly, in 2019, what happened was Xu Dongzhu, he was elected as the Director General of the Food and Agricultural Organization in the UN. And Xu also happens to be the first Chinese national to serve in this post. Today, if you look at the UN, out of the 15 principal agencies which under the United Nations, 9 are controlled by the Chinese, including the FAO, where you have Chinese as the head of the principal agencies of UN. Also in 2019, what happened was China came out with a white paper on food security where it never shied away, it explicitly stated that it would actively engage in international and regional food security governance. So consequently, immediately what China did was it also pledged 50 billion US dollars to the UNFAO under called the China South-South Cooperation Trust Fund. This was kept under the Global Development Initiative with which Xi Jinping promoted. So all these are just very clear signs that shows that China is going to play a very active role in terms of global and shaping the global food governance.
या इसका मतलब ये है कि चाइना ने पूरा जो खाने का जो गवर्नेंस है यूएन के जरिए इन्होंने काबू कर लिया, ताकि वो कभी उनके ऊपर कभी असर ना पड़े, पर बाकियों को कंट्रोल कर सकते हैं, राइट। और जितने इंपॉर्टेंट पद हैं यूएन के अंदर या वर्ल्ड फूड बॉडीज के अंदर, इन्होंने काबू कर लिया, जिससे इनका कंट्रोल बढ़ गया है। और ये हो गया पिछले 4-5 साल में, राइट। ये इस स्लाइड के अंदर थोड़ा प्रॉब्लम है क्योंकि ये थोड़ा कट गया है। इसका ये है कि फॉल्ट लाइन्स इन एग्रीकल्चरल सेक्टर। या प्लीज कैरी ऑन।
What has been China's strength because of its global power as an economic power? It has also been China's vulnerability. So now in the subsequent slides, we'll be looking at what has all been the vulnerabilities that China faces in agriculture sector. So one most important thing is the small farm holding. Today, the average size of land under the hands of the Chinese is 0.65 hectares, which is 0.6 acre. So the problem with the small farm holding is that the Chinese farmers doesn't invest much of money in terms of technology or innovation because they don't have the incentive due to the small size of the farm holding. So what happens is most of the time the work is done only manually, rather which desists the farmers from employing any modern technology like use of tractors and other modern equipments. And as I mentioned even just previously, due to its focus on achieving maximum crop yield, often by using excessive amount of fertilizer, the land has been totally degraded. Just to give you an example, today China uses 30% of world's fertilizers and pesticides on 9% of its global cropland. So this will tell you the amount of degradation that that has been happening and how much the soils have been polluted in China in terms of agriculture and cultivation. And of course, next is the natural disaster. You have flash floods, and I need not abbreviate on the problems which has been induced and created
Yeah,
by the
we can people can read it. We'll go to the next one. कि
global
बात यह है
warming.
कि हाँ, या बात यह है कि चाइना में ना बहुत प्रॉब्लम्स हैं एग्रीकल्चर में, इनके क्यों लैंड होल्डिंग्स कम है, टेक्नोलॉजी उतना ज्यादा नहीं है, और ज्यादातर ये पेस्टिसाइड इस्तेमाल करते हैं, जिससे डिग्रेडेशन हो जाता है, इनका नेचुरल डिजास्टर्स भी इसके ऊपर असर पड़ता है, राइट? और shall we go to the next one, or you want to continue with this?
I'll just touch upon some very key points
Yeah.
here, sir.
Yeah.
We have to talk about aging farmers, because today in China, no more agriculture is seen as a very lucrative occupation. So the next generation, they don't want to come into the farming industry. So what happens is the aging of farmers is a more bigger problem that what China has been facing in terms of aging population. Next point is food safety problem. I'll just give you one example. Still in China, many of the, in India, we use baby products like Cerelac, etc. Still in China, all those baby products and baby foods, even an average Chinese doesn't trust their own Chinese products. So, they depend on imports like Cerelac and other things. So this is because of the food safety problem. I think recently in 2020, China came out with, the food safety standards. Because many a time, because of polluted food, what happens is due to the complex distribution channel, they are not able to trace out where the actual problem is. So this is one of the vulnerability that China faces, and of course the lack of technological innovation, which I mentioned during the small farm holding. And due to today assertive China, not many people are willing to cooperate with China, which is what I mentioned about less international cooperation and geopolitical environment. And in terms of digital penetration, the rural areas in China are still very least digital. They haven't
Backward.
gone. Yeah, they have gone backward. They haven't been able to progress much in terms of creating a digital footprint. And of course, because of the changing consumer preferences, there is a scope for alternative protein which they are trying to go. So now you have plant-based meat and other organic food which the Chinese are preferring. So which they have to rely on certain advanced technology, and through which, because they have to now rely on imports.
Yeah. तो खास बात यह है कि इसमें कि चाइना के अंदर व्यवसाय करने के लिए लोग नहीं है, वो क्योंकि वहाँ उनका एज पॉपुलेशन आबादी बुढ़ापे में जा रहा है, और ये लोग जितने हैं बचे हैं वो ये एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर में है। इसका मतलब उनको टोटल उत्पादन जो है वो कम होता जाएगा। क्या कैरी ऑन।
So here there are two key points which I would like to touch here. One is regarding the priority that they have accorded to the problems which has been, they have recognized, acknowledged the problem, they have recognized the problem. So to reform that, what they have tried to do is in the 14th five-year plan, they focused on two things. One is innovating the agricultural sector as well as to digitize. They have also come out with guidelines for better quality products. This is a very interesting point. Regarding the growing seed war which is going to happen. I'm sure in the next forthcoming years, in the next 4 or 5 years, you'll be reading a lot about the growing seed war involving China. Because the development of seed industry, it's extremely, seed is, in China, seed is viewed as a bomb. It's a time bomb. So, seed is a basis through which it is a starting point of everything in agriculture. So development of seed industry in China is very, very essential to ensuring food security, so that China relies less on imports. So idea is self-sufficiency and relying less on imports. So as a result, what China...
ये एक इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट, ये एक इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट आपने बताया कि सीड टेक्नोलॉजी चाइना में कमी है। जब तक इनका सीड टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं होगा, दे विल नॉट बी सेल्फ सफिशिएंट। इसके बारे में आगे में भी बात करूंगा, राइट? So we'll have to go a little faster, Bala. So I'll go to the next slide. Okay.
Yes, sir. So to avert all these, what China has been doing is they have been investing a lot. The private players have been investing a lot in robotics and automation. Today, in real time, they have been monitoring plants and in greenhouses, especially Alibaba and Huawei. They have been investing a lot. And today, you see a synchronization of 3 different technologies, which I call the golden triangle. One is a blockchain, the IoT, and AI. And today, this is a very interesting point. In livestock industry, facial and image recognition technology is used in insurance, especially when you insure your livestock. So no more cheating and other frauds can be, committed. So again, this is what China has been. What you see in China is a transformation from Internet of Things to Internet of Animals, which is agricultural industrialization and technology. What you see there is a hen is there. You find a small chip on its leg. So when you go to an average JD store or somewhere in China, you find a QR code. Once you scan the QR code, you can find you'll be able to get the details of the livestock that you're buying, or the the chicken or something that you buy. So
Yeah,
it will monitor constantly. It will tell how much of steps that the the chicken has taken. So the idea is the more the number of steps the chicken takes, the more healthy it is. So according to the different changing needs and preference for healthy food, the consumer are able to purchase. So this is one of the innovations that China has
राइट।
been experimenting with.
तो इसका मतलब वो पूरा आपका जो डिजिटल तरीके इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं उनका अपना खाने का स्टैंडर्ड को बढ़ाने के लिए, और रोबोटिक्स और ऑटोमेशन कर रहे हैं वो अपना लाइफ स्टॉक रियरिंग में, राइट? तो अभी नेक्स्ट स्टेप्स क्या है आप बताइए।
Next is vertical farming. So slowly in urban areas where you find a lot of space crunch, China has been going towards what we call the vertical farm, because it not only saves time, it reduces food safety risk, because you have the source of food very near to the consumer. You don't have to procure it from rurally, so it is very near to the source, and also it lowers cost. And next, China has been actively engaged in its precision agriculture, although it is in its very early stages of implementation, through which you can find significant amount of differences in crop yield. And next most important technology is gene editing through the CRISPR-Cas9 technology. They have been doing a lot of stuff. In Jan 2022, the trial rules have been approved by China for gene-edited plants. Also, in terms of publication, if you look at it today, China has overtaken even the US in terms of agriculture research paper, as compared to the US.
या आप जो बोल रहे हैं इसका मतलब काफी वो नए कदम ले रहे हैं ताकि वर्टिकल फार्मिंग, प्रिसिशन एग्रीकल्चर, जीन एडिटिंग वगैरह वगैरह वगैरह, राइट? और हो सकता है आप जो बोल रहे हो कि सही है कि वो कुछ पेपर्स वगैरह लिखने में चाइना यूएसए से आगे चला गया, पर मैं सबको बताना चाहता हूँ कि चाइना का पेपर्स वगैरह बहुत होते हैं, पर एक्चुअल ग्राउंड के ऊपर थोड़ा काम कम होता है, खास करके एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर में, राइट? या
So to conclude, this is my last slide. What has been
Yeah.
playing to China's strength is also China's weakness. That is what we have discussed in the last few slides, which is the vulnerability. So what China is doing to complement and supplement this is, it has been developing what we call the agri-food technology 2.0, which involves, it is now trying to involve a lot of technology to improve the agriculture sector as well as bolster food security. But with, as we say, certain things which is beyond our control, like climate change, induced severe flooding, and over urbanization, aging population. It remains to be seen how the Communist Party mandate of N is, it remains to be seen how it tackles the new challenges.
या तो इसका मतलब यह है कि चाइना का हमने आप अभी तक ये देखा है कि हमारा क्या विश्लेषण है चाइना के बारे में, पर जैसे मैं चाइना के बारे में जब भी विश्लेषण करता हूँ, मैं देखता हूँ चाइना का क्या हालत है, चाइना क्या सोचती है इनके, इसलिए थोड़ा ये जल्दी 7 ऑन चाइना फूड इंसिक्योरिटी हम देखेंगे। सबसे पहले मैं बताना चाहता हूँ, जैसे बाला ने बताया, शी जिनपिंग खुद बहुत इंटरेस्ट लेता है ऑन वॉट एवर हैपन्स इन द एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर इन चाइना, क्योंकि फूड सिक्योरिटी के ऊपर इनका एक मनोवैज्ञानिक ये है कि फूड सिक्योरिटी में ये मात खा सकते हैं कभी भी, इनका वल्नरेबिलिटी पाया जाता है। नेक्स्ट पॉइंट ये है कि हर बार शी जिनपिंग ये हर 2-3 महीने में एक बार इनका एक हेडलाइन आ जाता है कि शी जिनपिंग कॉल्स फॉर फूड सिक्योरिटी, और एक्सटर्नल अनसर्टनिटीज जैसे बढ़ते जाते हैं कि वो बोलते हैं कि हमारा जो राइस बाउल है दूसरों के हाथ में है और ये हमारा नेशनल सिक्योरिटी के ऊपर असर पड़ेगा। एक और बात यह है कि ये जब यूक्रेन का लड़ाई जब शुरू हो गया है और ये जब वहां से, क्योंकि यूक्रेन वाज अ बिग फूड सप्लायर टू चाइना, मोस्ट इम्पोर्टेंटली कॉर्न एंड सनफ्लावर ऑयल वहां से आता है, राइट? तो यूक्रेन वॉर से क्या है कि इनका जो सप्लाई, नॉर्मल सप्लाई है, वो डिसरप्ट हो गया। उससे शी जिनपिंग और पूरा चाइना वाले ये सोचते हैं कि भाई हमारा फूड सिक्योरिटी के ऊपर असर पड़ेगा, एंड दे आर थिंकिंग वेरी सीरियसली अबाउट इट। ये जो भी बाला ने पहले बताया है वो दोबारा आ रहा है। You have any view on this, Bala? You can button, not to. It's not a one-way thing, all right? Okay, yeah. और उसके बाद ये है कि हालांकि दे आर ट्राइंग अ लॉट कि इनोवेशन करो, नया स्टेप लो, प्रिसिशन एग्रीकल्चर, रोबोटिक्स, ऑटोमेशन वगैरह, पर इनका खुद का राय ये है कि डोमेस्टिक सीड इंडस्ट्री प्लेग्ड बाय लैक ऑफ इनोवेशन। ठीक है ना, वो इनोवेट नहीं कर रहे हैं, वो नया तरीका नहीं लेके आ रहे हैं जिससे उनका अपना फूड सिक्योरिटी बिल्कुल सही हो। ओके, और एक और बात यह है कि ये सब बोलते हैं चाइना में, मैंने बोला बहुत बोलते हैं, पर इनके अंदर काउंटरफिटिंग भी होता है, यानी जाली बीज। इनका सबसे बड़ा वीकनेस है कि इनके पास सीड टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं है। ये जो बीज है ये यूएसए या कनाडा या बाहर के देशों से ये इंपोर्ट करते हैं। इनके खुद के इंडिजिनस सीड्स इनके पास है ही नहीं, राइट। नेक्स्ट पॉइंट यह है कि देखिए, जब गोबी डेजर्ट बढ़ रहा था, इन्होंने काफी रिक्लेम लॉट ऑफ द डेजर्ट, डी डेजर्टिफिकेशन किया बाय प्लांटिंग ट्रीज एंड ऑल दैट, दे रिक्लेम द डेजर्ट। पर अभी क्या है इनका, जो क्योंकि प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है खाना उगाने के लिए और बाहर एक्सटर्नल फोर्सेस में प्रॉब्लम आ रहा है, तो क्रॉपलैंड एक्सपैंड कर रहे हैं। वो क्रॉपलैंड कैसे एक्सपैंड कर रहे हैं, जहां इन्होंने पहले पेड़ वगैरह लगाया उसको काट के दोबारा ले रहे हैं। तो ये फुल सर्कल आ गया इनका कहानी, राइट। ये आगे क्या जाएगा ये देखने वाली बात है, राइट। पर ये इट इज नॉट अ वेरी सेटिस्फाइंग थिंग फॉर चाइना, बिकॉज दिस विल लीड टू मोर प्रॉब्लम्स। इनका उत्पादन भी कम हो गया बिकॉज ऑफ ओवर यूज ऑफ केमिकल्स। एंड ऑफ कोर्स ये आज के दिन ये प्रॉब्लम चल रहा है चाइना का फूड सिक्योरिटी की। क्यों? क्योंकि इनके बारिश, आउट ऑफ सीजन बारिश हो गया, और आउट ऑफ सीजन की बारिश की वजह से इनका पूरा जो गेहूं का क्रॉप है वो अफेक्टेड है। ये ऑलरेडी 2 या 3 महीने पहले ही इनको कटाई शुरू हो गया। अभी तक इन्होंने 25% कटाई शुरू किया है, खत्म किया है। इनका अनुमान यह है कि आज इस साल का जो व्हीट क्रॉप है इनका तकरीबन 50% नष्ट हो जाएगा। और ये पार्ट ऑफ ग्लोबल ग्लोबल वार्मिंग और क्लाइमेट चेंज के हिस्सा है। और जैसे मैं पहले भी बता चुका हूं, चाइना इज ससेप्टेबल टू क्लाइमेट चेंज इन अ बिग वे, और उसका असर ऑलरेडी शुरू हो गया है। और ये मेरा ही कहना नहीं है, इनका कहना है। ये इनके बोलते हैं कि वीट crops face unprecedented risks as world heats up. That's what the study says. और ये स्टडी इस सीजन के लिए नहीं है, आगे वाले आने सीजन्स के लिए पूरा है, राइट। यहाँ पर हमारा जो आज का ये पूरा सिलसिला खत्म होता है। हम कुछ सवाल लेंगे। We'll take a few questions, Bala, about at least
Yes,
5-6 questions, right?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
First is I'd like to thank Jyotishwar for your generosity. Okay. Right. Okay. So this question is from Tritik. He says climate change, water shortages, and rising population, degrading soil, etc., are factors that might lead to a food shortage in our country too in the near future. How do we preempt these issues?
Would you like to respond, sir? After that, I'll go after you, sir.
No, you respond. You go ahead. Go ahead. If this thing, otherwise, look, this is a problem. It is a universal problem. हमारा जो प्रॉब्लम जो है, इट इज वाटर शॉर्टेज। और वाटर, इट इज नॉट वाटर शॉर्टेज, वी मिसमैनेज आवर वाटर, राइट। द डे वी कैन सॉर्ट आउट आवर वाटर प्रॉब्लम्स, वी विल हैव ऑल दीज इश्यूज, राइट। वेदर इट इज राइजिंग पॉपुलेशन, एक्चुअली वी आर टुडे फूड सरप्लस, वी हैव सम ऑफ द बेस्ट एग्रीकल्चरल मेथोडोलॉजीज, बट आवर प्रॉब्लम इज वाटर। इफ द डे हमारा जो पानी का ये है, नॉर्थ साउथ वाटर ट्रांसफर, water transfer from the Indus basin to the Gangetic basin और ब्रह्मपुत्र basin to the Gangetic basin अगर हम सॉल्व कर सकते हैं, ये 3 चीजें मेगा, ये प्रॉब्लम हो जाएगा। पर ये प्रॉब्लम उतना आसानी से हल नहीं होगा, because these are political problems. Yeah, you want to say anything else? You welcome.
Yes, sir. The idea is, I think, in certain kind of challenges, the way I see it and understand and look at comparing Indian agriculture with China's agriculture, certain problems like land degradation, there is similarity of problem because climate change not only affects China but also India.
It might affect us also.
Yes, it will affect us also. But a lot of, I think, research have been done, including I remember one of the famous research was, growing rice in salt-resistant waters, etc. Idea is to we have to not only acknowledge the problem, but realize the problem.
We
I
have to
think we have
take
already
action on
done.
that.
Yes, we have already. Prime Minister has declared, Honorable Prime Minister has declared, we'll go carbon neutral by 2070. So I think all these are steps in the right direction, but at the end of the day, any policy it will just boil down to each and every individual citizen. So he has to understand how much of carbon footprint that he is leaving here. So even
Yeah,
small things like conserving water, as General Saab mentioned, that will also matter. So I think it starts with you, I would say.
yeah. Okay. Right. Next question. The declining population of China is not a counter for food insecurity. Your view?
The declining population of China is not a counter for the population can be, according to your proposition, the population can be declining, but the taste and preference as an additional layer is causing more amount of stress. That is what I mentioned in my presentation also. The population can be 100, but you look at the amount of stress that a land will have. If, say, for example, if you want to feed a 100 members in a society with rice, and the same 100 members of society has to be fed with meat, the amount of stress that the ecosystem will take in if you want to serve 100 people with meat will be larger than 100 you feed with rice. So that is what I was trying to tell. So just because the population is decreasing doesn't mean that it will buttress the demand will also become low.
See, the point in China is not only the population is decreased, but population decrease is one point. Their food habits have changed and they've gone to a higher order of food. That's the second point. The third point is climate change is going to hit them very badly. And this is going to hit them very badly, very specifically because already their problems in both their main rivers, Hwangwi and Yangtze Basin, are showing early signs of climate change. And it has now shown regularly for the past 3-4 years. So these things are going to, spiral as days go by. In comparison, in South Asia, the effect is not so much. That's what, if you see in the past 4 years, that's what comes out. And that is why I see China getting more paranoid about their food security or insecurity. Okay. China may have huge challenges from food security to debt crisis, but it will not collapse as we assume, as all economists and experts agree that in around 250 India's GDP. Oh, well, that's Rahul will take this question some other day. Okay. Uh, yeah, let's take this. What would be the position if other nations contributing to China's food security presently also face distress in agricultural output due to decrease in their population and increase in their population and climate change?
To answer this question, I'll say, in my presentation, I mentioned a point how much of control that China has on the global food supply, demand and supply ecosystem. So I think all these calculations will be definitely taken into account by the policymakers in China. But definitely, I agree. If everyone are now facing a shortage, the price will naturally it is going to increase. But the amount of shock with the kind of control that China has over the food supply chain is it's very large. So I'm sure they'll be sufficiently calculating all these, taking these into account. But if there is a global shock, everyone will be badly hit. Just to put it bluntly, that is the scenario.
Yeah, that's the thing. But China has managed this whole thing very smartly. There's no doubt. There's a comment also like that, which I think is they known this problem for long, and this is one problem they know. The CCP knows if it is handled badly, they'll be out of power the next day. I mean, there's no two ways about it because governments, kingdoms have changed because of famine and food shortages in China. This is historic. So they're very scared of it. So they have gone 2 steps more to ensure that food security. Despite this, they have problem issue. Okay. Right, right. The next thing is Today we are having problems. Right. Let me key in this. Okay. What is food governance? India is fairly self-sufficient in agriculture. When China holds global food supply, does it affect India? No, it doesn't affect India. Let me take this on, Bala. We are not any way connected with China. We are a food surplus nation. We are a milk surplus nation, right? Even last year, when we had premature problems with our extreme heat with our wheat supplies and rice, we still managed to give food out. We didn't have a problem. So we are not dependent on China. China has different problems. It has gone invested where all, and it has invested through the BRI as a backup and in backup and as an insurance. So even if China hoards food, there's this thing. Let me also tell you, though I have said that China holds food for 2 to 3 years in many places, that's like good old FCI. They also have problems of rotting food and food which can't be used. They might stock a lot, but it might not be useful also. So that is where I leave it. Okay, right. Yeah, this is what. Yeah, Jayant Kashyap says, what is the real cause of 17 plus food warehouse fires in 2021 in PRC? Does it indicate a cover up of widespread corruption? Yeah.
So just to give you a right perspective, see many things in China you don't get to see what is the real issue or motive about it. So what they say, that is the news. You can't expect the same kind of civil society as we have very active in India to be the same kind of things in China. So I'll not be able to give a very concrete answer as what is the real.
Yeah, but yeah. There is no doubt there's a lot of corruption. They underreport, they overreport, they say everything is held, but it is not held. So what Jayant you're saying is largely true. Okay. So we'll go by that. Okay. Now Rekha Pai says, okay, Ask General is our push towards millet, uh, a strategy to overcome most of the problems China faced. See, what you're saying fundamentally is right. That if you go for millets, you can offset other cereals. Firstly, China doesn't have a history of eating millets. That's the problem. They are more rice eaters and more wheat eaters. In fact, they're more rice eaters. Right. They don't also have a history of growing millets in the way we are. Whereas in our country, especially in the desert region and the Deccan areas, a lot of people exist and subsist on millets. So it's a cultural factor also, right? So to that extent, I don't think China will go towards millets, but who knows in later years how it will change. Yeah,
Just
anything else
to
you want to say, Paul?
Just to add up to what General Saab has said, this also happens to be at UN where India declared to be the year of millets. Also, one point is that millets doesn't induce that much of, it is not that water intensive. So the stress on water table and groundwater resources is also less compared to cultivating rice and sugarcane and other crops.
Yeah. So we have to go. We have to diversify our agriculture. I think which a lot of people are aware of it, and we are doing it. And I think we are doing it in a far better manner than what is being done in China. You will see China agriculture is still remote. They are not up to it. Though they talk of vertical farming and digitization and all that, like everything China does, it's not so great. They're still having problems. And their biggest problem, as far as aging is concerned, is what Bala brought out, that there are not enough people to work on the fields. They're all old people working on the fields. So that is a problem for them. Okay. Shanu Mishra says, oh, it's gone. Let me get it back. Yeah. What about water shortage in China? Also, India being a member of Quad, can we convince West to not give seats to China, bleed China with 1,000 cuts, starting with food security? Well, yeah, water. Yeah, Bala, carry on.
Yes, I agree with Shana Mishra. China does face an acute water shortage because since the times of Mao, they always wanted to divert, the south of China, which is always surplus with water, they always wanted to divert the resource to the north, which has been since the times of Mao. And more than water shortage, another adding up to another problem is contamination of groundwater, which also, due to the heavy metallic pollutions and etc. China, adding to that, it also faces pollution in groundwater, other thing. Regarding not giving seeds to China, China already realized this problem. So, starting 10, 15 years ago, they started to slowly set up what you call seed banks. And today, in April 2022, yes, April 2022, they through a policy at the provincial level, they increase the number of food banks to more than 100. I think it is somewhere around 136. They increased. So they've already realized this problem. They have been taking steps to avert such a kind of crisis.
Yeah, what you're saying is right, Shanu, that they have a major water problem. And that major, like I said, you see, water is not only for agriculture, water is required for people, water is required for industry. As you keep industrializing, you need more water. And you need for agriculture. Okay. And they've been trying, like what he said, south to north water transfer systems. They have already commissioned a few canals. They're also trying to. That's why they're trying to take water from the Sangpo. They're also trying to get water from Lake Baikal. Fancy ideas, but even that they're hitting a road block, because in the past 3 years, if you see the Yangtze Basin at one point of time had surplus water. Today it has deficient water. Even this year in Yunnan, they're having a water shortage. And as a result of water shortage, they're not having electricity. If they don't have electricity, where is industrialization going to go? So there are chain effects. It's not as if it's just a food issue with China. And plus the major thing which what Bala said, groundwater contamination, pesticides, industrial contamination, right? It's very nice to say rare earths, China controls rare earths, but the cost China pays for its rare earth is something which we don't understand, because they're contaminating their own ground for years to come, and that contamination doesn't go that easily, right? The CCP is doing something superficially to show us something, but what is happening is heavy degradation within China, right? And my reading of China is this: they do a lot of things, a lot of good things. Equally, they do a lot of bad things. I keep saying, Mao God gave them freedom, but he also killed 45 million people through his Cultural Revolution and Great Leap Forward. Deng gave them riches, but he also consigned them to decline with his one-child policy. And Xi Jinping is also going to finish off communist China completely by the time he finishes, by his fancy ideas of the China dream and rejuvenation and the zero COVID policies. Who knows? This could be the Chernobyl of China already. Okay, might be seeing the after effects. So let's see how things go. Right? Okay. Last question I'll take on from Vijay Kumar. Despite efforts by China, do you see the effects of GDP of China and also becoming central power of world because of basic food security and over-industrialization not carrying Mother Earth? They can't happen. See, just because they are an industry, it doesn't mean they'll become the greatest. Their GDP is going down. Their food security is bare minimum food security. They are at actually a precarious stage, right? So I don't think, right, they are in any stage. In fact, I'm going to write an article. I was just discussing. They have a major problem, and I will explain in that article why China is going to have major problems. Right. Yeah. Three Gorges dams hold huge water normally. Are you sure there is water shortage? Basically, let me tell you, year before last, there was so much water in Three Gorges Dam, it was almost about to break. Last year, it came down to runoff water level, below that. Okay, so don't think Three Gorges Dam is the solution. In fact, it is their problem today. Three Gorges Dam is the problem. The reason why they built Three Gorges Dam was not to hold water, but to control floods, which they have not been able to. You have to go into China into greater detail to understand each of their ideas. Right. I think we've come to the end of the lot of questions. A lot of questions, Bala. I think you have ignited something very good, and I
Thank
think
you,
you
sir.
covered the food security or the food insecurity of China in a very balanced manner. While for the fundamentals, China is food secure. For higher order food, it is insecure. Right? Now that people have got used to the better food, if that is denied to them, there will be problems. That is the issue. And notwithstanding whatever China says, China's problems are not only decreasing population, it is also lack of water, climate change, and lack of food technology, which is going to hit them hard in days to come. But then Bala has given us a good view of everything. So if you have any final words you can say, Bala, then we'll close it up.
So first, I would like to thank all the audience for their insightful questions. Lot of useful discussions were brought to the table, and once again, thanks to you, sir. For allowing me to discuss and speak on this pertinent topic. And more strength and power to you. And we all, request you to make more videos on the Speaking to Everyday China and educate. In fact, in one of my conversation, I remember you always say, just break the Torah. China, China, China. So I think that should be the mantra that every Indian should have. And once again, thank you so much for inviting me, sir. And thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for everyone. As I keep requesting everyone, please ask everyone to subscribe to this channel. I've been getting a lot of thing. You make your video short, speak faster, deliver it with something. I'm not that variety. We are reading China. We are not reading interest, difficult subjects. You have to understand the whole story slowly and steadily. This is not a entertainment channel. This is not a quick gun Murugan channel. This is a gunner shot, and gunners do things very slowly and steadily, and surely will hit the target with all your help. All right. Remember, ये क्विक गन मुर्गन चैनल नहीं है कि हम कुछ भी करें. हम आराम से गनर शॉट स्टाइल में कराएंगे काम ताकि गोला सही जगह पे दुश्मन के सर के ऊपर गिरे. Thank you. Good evening and Jai Hind.
So just